Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today because we're going to decode something absolutely fascinating. Have you ever watched a highly capable, otherwise brilliant person make a completely baffling decision? Or, maybe you've dealt with someone who just repeatedly self-sabotage, and you catch yourself thinking, why on earth are they acting so stupidly? Well, today we're going to completely dismantle that label. We're unpacking the psychology behind what we so often mislabel as stupid behavior, and we're uncovering the silent, invisible forces that actually drive the whole shebang. So, I want to start by tossing out this provocative question to you. What actually causes poor thinking? Our immediate, almost automatic assumption is that bad decisions are strictly tied to brain power, right? We kind of assume that if someone makes a poor choice, they must just lack the intelligence to figure out the right one. It's like we treat the human brain like a computer processor. If the output is glitchy, the processor must be slow. But modern psychology reveals that this is actually a massive misconception. No way is it just about IQ.
Okay, let's dive into this. We often equate poor thinking with a lack of intelligence. The myth that someone just can't process information. But the reality? It's far more interesting. Poor thinking is almost always caused by a lack of awareness. Psychology actually shows us that intelligence is not always the main issue here. Very often, you've got these highly capable people, but their awareness level is just completely offline, meaning they don't fully perceive themselves, they totally misread others, or they just fail to grasp situations clearly in real time. It's not that they can't process the data, it's that they're missing the critical data in the very first place. The real danger here is that low awareness operates entirely in the background. It creates these quiet, subtle behaviors that silently limit a person's growth without them ever even noticing.
So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover 1. The intelligence myth. 2. Missing the social subtext. 3. Emotions and hidden patterns. 4. The meta-perception gap. And finally, number 5, the power of noticing. Let's get right into it.
Starting right off with Section 1, the intelligence myth, which moves us to Section 2, missing the social subtext.
This brings us to our first outward-facing sign of low awareness. Psychology links this to a concept called social self-monitoring. Think of this as your real-time dashboard. It's the ability to observe how your words and actions are landing with other people right in the moment. Now, individuals with a blind spot here, they simply cannot accurately read the impact of their behavior. They might be completely dominating a meeting or making a totally inappropriate comment, and in their head, they're like, I'm acting totally normal. Meanwhile, literally everyone else in the room is exchanging panicked eye contact, feeling super uncomfortable, or just trying to create some distance. Look, if you never adjust your behavior based on the reactions of the people around you, you're really not fully aware of your own presence.
And that leads us directly to the second sign of low awareness, which is missing the obvious context. When awareness is low, a person often takes things entirely literally. You know the type. Jokes feel confusing, sarcasm goes completely over their head, and the deeper implied meaning of a conversation is just entirely missed. Psychology shows us that true awareness actually includes understanding the subtext. It's about getting what's being implied, not just the literal dictionary definition of the words coming out of someone's mouth. Without this ability to read between the lines, human communication becomes incredibly shallow and honestly just endlessly misunderstood.
All right, let's pivot to Section 3. Emotions and hidden patterns. Now we're shifting our focus inward. What about the internal world? Well, this brings us to sign number 3, not realizing when your mood is actively hijacking your thinking. Your emotions quietly influence your decisions all the time, but individuals with low awareness, they don't even notice it happening. Actually, let me frame it like this. When an individual is in an angry mood, suddenly everything in their life feels incredibly negative and hostile, or when they're stressed, every single email or request feels like an absolute drop-everything emergency. Psychology shows that low emotional awareness leads to deeply distorted thinking. And the trap here is that without awareness of that distortion, you genuinely think you're being completely logical. You literally don't realize that your mood is the thing driving the logic.
And when our moods dictate our logic unchecked, we fall right into sign number 4, weak pattern awareness. This is the psychological inability to connect repeated experiences into meaningful insight. People with this blind spot just keep repeating behaviors without ever noticing the pattern. They just don't zoom out to look at the larger timeline of their life.
So the crucial point is perfectly visualized in this loop. Step 1, same situation. Step 2, same argument. Step 3, same exact outcome. We all know someone like this, right? They constantly find themselves in the exact same types of toxic relationships, having the exact same arguments at work, and facing the exact same negative outcomes. But instead of recognizing the pattern and asking, wait, what is my role in all this? Every single situation feels brand new to them. For these individuals, life basically repeats itself on an endless loop, but the understanding, it never actually arrives. Moving right along to section 4, the meta-perception gap. We are now moving to the final, and arguably the most profound blind spot of them all. Sign number 5 is rooted in this psychological term, meta-perception. Meta-perception is simply understanding how others perceive you. Now, most people have at least a rough, ballpark idea of how they come across to their friends, their family, and their colleagues. But when you lack this crucial psychological mirror, you kind of lose your anchor to reality. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is it shows how low awareness individuals suffer from a massive gap between their self-image and reality. They firmly believe they're coming across as helpful or authoritative or hilarious. Meanwhile, the reality is that others experience them as micromanaging, arrogant, or just completely out of touch. When metaperception is missing, your blind spots aren't just, temporary mistakes. They become a constant, permanent state of misunderstanding. You are essentially starring in a movie where you think you're the hero, but the audience is watching a completely different film. And that brings us to section 5, the power of noticing. So how do we actually fix this? Let's shift from diagnosing the problem to the empowering psychological treatment, because we don't have to stay stuck in these blind spots. To recap, these are the 5 silent problems we've uncovered: not noticing your impact on others, missing the underlying context, being totally unaware of how your emotions hijack your logic, repeating unseen behavioral patterns, and misjudging how you're perceived. I call these silent problems because they aren't loud, explosive flaws, They don't announce themselves when they walk into a room. They are quiet, invisible limits on our personal growth. But the good news, once you know what they are, you can start looking for them. You can actually start observing yourself. Which brings us to our final incredibly empowering takeaway. The mind doesn't improve just by thinking more. It improves by noticing more. You don't need a higher IQ to make better decisions in life. You don't need to endlessly overthink your problems. You simply need to become a better observer of yourself and your environment. So I'm going to leave you with this question to ponder today. If you were to step outside yourself right now and truly notice your own patterns, what silent loop would you finally break? Thank you so much for exploring this with me, and I challenge you to spend the rest of your day just noticing.